Okay, so I'm going to be doing two different things. One is a really short presentation based on some of my experiences on the trip, and then a longer one, which is going to be actually a continuation of something that we started before I left. So the first one is called Test Me, Lord, that I may know myself. And when I was up in Canada on that trip, I did go under some testing, and I should have expected it because it's happened before. When I go back to that area of the world, I'm also going back to the place where I wasn't a Christian anymore. And all the people there didn't know me as a Christian. They knew me in a different way. And so they keep throwing me intentionally or unintentionally into situations that are testing me. And that's how we came to this. So we hate testing. We don't like being tested, even in school. When a test comes up and we're required to show that we have learned what we're supposed to learn, we hate that idea. But it's actually for our own good. It teaches us something, and that's kind of the message in this: is that we shouldn't really be afraid of testing. We shouldn't hate testing. It's done for our good. So I have some verses about that. One comes from James 1:2-3. And it says, may you have every joy, my brethren, when you enter various and many temptations, for you know that the trial of faith imparts to you patience. So right there, it says, these are for your good. They help build up patience in the faith. And another one from James 1:12 says, blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been tested, he will receive a crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. So again, um, we endure temptations, but it's for our own good. From Thessalonians, First Thessalonians 2:4, but as when we were tested by God to be entrusted with his gospel, so we speak, not as if we would please the children of men, but God who tests our hearts. So God tests our hearts. He does do that. And not that he doesn't know what's in us, but he wants us to know what is in us. And then when we have gone through that process, and we know we because we've been through it, we know that we are steadfast in that area, and we've proven ourselves. So from Hebrews 11:17 says, by faith Abraham offered Isaac during his testing, and laid his only son on the altar, whom he had received by the promise. So we aren't the only people going through that. People in the Bible went through that as well, and Abraham was among them. And then from John 6:6, but Yeshua said to them, said, this is a test for him, for he knew what he was going to do. So this, in that one, Jesus is asking a question of one of his disciples as a test to that disciple to see what that disciple understands. And Jesus already knew what the outcome was going to be, but he asked that question as a test for that person. And so that our lives are much like that. God will test us to show us what we are and where we have it, what we've achieved at, what we're strong at, what we're weak at. And from Job 23:10, but he knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. So that's very much a New Testament idea being expressed by Job there. And it's true, of course, it's been true throughout all of history. God tests his people so that he can show them to be strong uh, and reliable people. And he does that for not because he doesn't know, as I said, he knows what we're like inside, but we don't know. We might think, well, I can handle those kind of situations, but then we find ourselves in the middle of those situations and discover that maybe we aren't as ready as we thought we were. And so that's the purpose of testing, is it shows us ourselves to ourselves. So God doesn't test us to failure. When we do testing in the computer industry anyway, and other industries, I know it's the same way, you test to the point of failure. You want to see that everything is going to work even under the worst circumstances. And then you set up the worst circumstances to see if it's going to work under those. But God doesn't test like that. He doesn't test in an effort to make you fail. He tests, he doesn't want you to fall on your face and fall away from the faith even because you've been tested so hard. He wants you, he gives you tests that you can go through, and you will be stronger for those tests. And he knows he tests us to show us what is in us. So it's not for his benefit that he does these testings. It's for our benefit to learn from that. And I went to, for me on this trip, um, And this has been the way testing has always been for me. Testing, and maybe it's the same way for you. Testing comes like a pop quiz. You weren't expecting it, just there. And all of a sudden, bang, there you are right in the middle of a situation, and here you are having to deal with it, and you didn't really have time to think about it in advance. There's the pop quiz. And so that's, and often I don't even realize it was a test until it was over. And I think, wow, that was kind of a nuisance to have to go through that. And then I realized, as I did on this trip, that I said, boy, there's been an awful lot of things going on here. What's going on here? And I realized that I'd gone through tests in 3 different areas. So we'll talk about those areas. One of those is wealth. I'll have to give you some backstory here.
Well, let me pause in there. I just want to make sure that you understand there's a difference between temptation and testing by God. They're not the same, although it seems like everybody uses them interchangeably, but they're not the same.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so anyway, my business partner was one of the people that we stayed with there, former business partner, because the business was sold. And Melody and I used to be partners in that business, and we had equal shares to his. But when we moved down to Texas, it was kind of necessary, but not absolutely necessary for us to sell off our shares at that time. And that was quite a long time ago. Obviously, we moved to Texas 20 years ago or more. And so we no longer had shares in that company when it was sold. And when the company was sold, it sold for a lot of money, and not the kind of money that we got when we sold our shares. And so our partner has built this huge house. It's hard to even describe how huge this house is. There's an elevator in the house, so you don't see that too often. The 4-car garage has a basement for all of the underneath the 4-car garage, and there's a work area underneath there where you can rebuild engines and do stuff like that. And so if you can imagine anything that an amazing house might have, this house has it. And so the walkthrough tour of it takes 3 hours. So that gives you some understanding of it too. And that's partly because the guy loves antiques and he likes to explain how all these antiques fit in and what they all mean to him. But in any case, so after this tour through that, I kind of came to a moment and said, well, how do I feel about all of this? And I had to say, I didn't feel anything. That wealth simply does not impress me. And I'm glad to be able to say that. This is an amazing house by any stretch. It's a totally high-tech house. You go beepity boop on any other place and you can turn off all the lights in the room or do whatever you want. The blinds close, all that sort of stuff automatically. But in the end, I had to say that it just had no effect on me. And I was honestly not bothered by the fact that I could have kept my shares and could have had the same kind of wealth, but it doesn't mean anything to me. That wealth is just nothing to me. And I was, like I said, happy to be able to find that in myself, that I had no such desires. I had no regrets about having sold the shares. I just felt nothing about it. I was happy for him. He's got a house that he likes, great for him. But it's just not me. And Melody and I talked about that later on. And she had the same idea too. She said, this just isn't the kind of life that we live. It isn't who we are. We wouldn't have this house if we had the choice to have this house. And so I was glad about that. She also had a more practical concern. She said, who's going to dust all of this? and yeah, you have to ask that question. Who's going to take care of this amazing place? So that was one of the tests that I went through, and I was glad to find out that I have none of these desires for wealth that can harm people. And there are people who do chase after wealth so much. That's just not part of me. And I was glad to be able to honestly say that that's just not who I am. Just God has taken away any kind of desire I might have had for that kind of wealth. But there are other people who are struggling with that on that trip. We talked to other people who lived in that same city, just one moment, and they are, some of them were liberals, and boy, they despised the fact that he had this amazing house. They just could not stand that. They felt that the government should have taken away his money because he shouldn't have been able to build a house that was that big, and they begrudged him every inch of that. And we had no such feelings about it at all like that. But there were definitely some people who were spreading false stories about the house, and you could go out and talk to people, and everybody had some sort of a false story. And we brought some back from our business partner to hear them, and he said, no, those are not true. So you had a question?
Does he live there by himself?
He does, yeah. He just had he thought he was going to be married by this time, but something fell apart, and he isn't married and isn't engaged anymore either. So money doesn't buy you everything. So that was the wealth thing. And for me, that was an area where I really didn't know how I would respond to having such opulent splendor, and having had, in fact, an opportunity at that if I played my cards differently in life. But I have no regrets there at all. Another one is alcohol. And you know that I was not a Christian for a very, very long time. And I drink alcohol now like once a week. So I keep it very tightly controlled. But here, this guy in his house, one of the things, he's not a big wine drinker either, but he has this wine dispenser on the wall of the kitchen. And all you have to do is hold up your glass, push a button, and it will put either 1, 3, or 6 ounces of alcohol of your choice into your glass. And it is just too easy. and so it's so easy to make an excuse for that. Well, I wouldn't normally have a drink today, but I'm on vacation, so it's okay. We'll do it. We'll break the rules. I'm on vacation. Yeah, throw the rules out. But I didn't do that. And so my integrity was there, despite the opportunity to break my pattern and do things that I wouldn't have done, which many people do on vacation. I have another story about that, about somebody else that I know of. Sometimes people on vacation throw out their rules and don't have the integrity that they really should have had. And the one that I knew of comes from a pastor's convention that I heard about. The person that I heard it from was at the convention, and he said that a lot of the people there, the pastors who were there, were chasing after women who couldn't have been their wives because wives weren't invited, and they were not at all living the kind of lives that they should have been during this convention. And he was kind of shocked at that. And there are many people who use opportunities like vacations and stuff to do things that they shouldn't do. And that was another one where I was tested on that one. Would I stay according to the way that I live my life, or would I change the way I live just to take opportunities?
What faith was that?
I think that was Baptists. Yeah. Okay, drugs is another one. I don't think I've ever really mentioned this to you before, but when I was away from the faith, I was into lots of things, and drugs was one of them. But I gave that up when I was about my late 20s or so. And part of the reason was by that time I'd settled into a career, and drugs would have resulted in a criminal charge and would have really hurt my career. So I quit drugs for the reason that they would have wrecked my career if I'd gotten caught with them. And so for many, many years now, I haven't touched drugs at all. But now when I go back there, the laws have changed in Canada, and what was once illegal is now legal there. And so all kinds of marijuana products are available there. In fact, my business partner said, "Oh, Stan, you'll want to see this. Now that it's legal, you can buy drugs in all sorts of different forms that you never even thought of." Oh yeah, thanks. And so we'd been talking at the table, and he jumped up and ran off to one of the rooms and came back with this big basket of drugs that you could now buy legally, and showed them to me. And yeah, they sure come in a bunch of different forms that we never had them in. But again, this was something that I'd given up in my life, and I was not going to change that, even though now they were legal, and I'd given them up because they were illegal before and would have damaged my career, or could have damaged my career. I had given them up, and I wasn't going to go back to those, and so I refused to be involved in them. And I was just kind of curious, as he thought, about the different forms that they now came in. So those were 3 different areas where I was tested on that, and they were all places where people had known me to be a different person, and I can't believe that they would have been trying to trip me up and get me to fall back into that pattern, but who knows, maybe some of them had that in mind. But this wasn't testing that I had expected. This was something I just kind of got dropped into and never really thought about it in advance. So for all of us, what can we take home from this? Whenever and however testing comes on you, you're most likely not going to be expecting it when it comes. That's kind of the point of the test. If you could study in advance for the test and prepare yourself for the test, it wouldn't be a good test. And so expect the unexpected in your life when these testings come. But when you have gone through it, you really know where you are on the path. You really know who you are. You know what you will do, what you won't do, and if your integrity has held, you know that's something that is part of you now, and you're not going to lose that. You're going to keep that, and it gives you a confidence to keep on moving on. So you've now got this area where you've proven yourself. You know you've got this one under control. Now you can grow in another area. You can continue to grow in other areas, and in the same way be tested in them in time. And another thing that this does is it demonstrates to others that you have changed. And so a lot of these people have never known me as a Christian. And so now they see, yes, he won't do these things that he used to do before. He's changed. And so that's another part of your testimony for you, is that the testing has now shown these people that you aren't the same person you used to be.
I had the same feeling, like, sometimes I try to go back to some of the movies that I used to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this was one of my favorite ones. I used to watch this one way back when I was in my 20s or something. And I remember it very fondly. And then I start playing and I go, who could listen to this garbage? Oh my God, they're doing this. And I looked at that. Oh, this is terrible. And I just couldn't look at it.
Yeah.
But it's funny, but the movie didn't change. It's a person that changes, you know.
That's right. Yeah. And it does show you've changed. And that's kind of the point here, is that when you go through these testings and like you're saying, and for me as well, it often happens when you go back to older times when you weren't the same person that you were now, or you are now. And so those kind of give you an opportunity to say, this is what you were and this is what you are now. And you can see, yes, I've made some progress. I've grown and become stronger. My integrity is held. Okay, so that's the first part. Tried to keep that pretty quick.